reforming racial justice. So just a little back. So I'm Dina Celano. I'm the new director of Oxy Arts. My temporary office, just so you know, we're in transition, is in booth 228. My door is usually open unless I'm at a meeting, so I'm there. As Olivia knows, I'm there. You can just kind of drop by. So I wanted to grab this insanely talented, amazing group of artists together, actually in response to what to send up when it goes down, if any of you came to that, and I realized having conversations with some of you, and also just it seemed that these were topics people wanted to talk about. So we brought these amazing people here. So without further ado, and also some of you submitted questions we put out on Facebook and social media asking for prompt questions, so some of you submitted, and so you'll hear that. Without further ado, this is Douglas Kearney. He is, I'm just going to say everyone's name. Douglas Kearney, he's a poet and educator, and former mentor, actually, current mentor. This is Bruce Lemon Jr. He is the artistic director of Watts Village Theater Company, which just did the Every 28-Hour Plays Festival over the weekend, which I bet he's recovering from. Oh, yeah. He's also an amazing actor. This is Maya Jupiter. She is an MC and artivist. This is Faith Santilla. She is an organizer and artist. Yeah. This is Aleshea Harris. She is a spoken word artist, a playwright, and an educator. And this is Traci Kato, right? Is that right? Kato, I did it wrong again. Traci Kato-Kiriyama. She is a theater devisor and also an organizer. So we're really lucky to have these incredible people, as you can see on their bios. If you didn't grab a sheet, grab it on your way out. And to start, Doug's going to share a little something. Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, this is called Well Hung, which, is something that you could use if you were like quality control working for a lynching factory. That would be kind of like a way you could say it was done well. But it's also a description of the male phallus.
Black hunger for pink cats about blacks getting too fat. Fat. What cat's hungry for? Fat. We forget back. Pink cats say black skips black and pink cat. Well, fat. Hunger for black skips about pink cats. Get back. Pink cats for black cats. Yes. Even no. Yes. Fat. Black skips getting pink cats. What cat's hungry for? Stiff. What you hungry for? Fat. Well, what cat's hungry for? Interration. The red cat's black skips, and pink cats whack out. Fat. Like pink cat. Yes, fat.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Great. So on that subject of the work you make, so we're just going to go around and I've asked each of the artists to introduce themselves with the prompt questions. What do you do and why do you do it?
All right.
Or if you need a second.
Can I have a second?
Yeah, why don't you?
I'll take it. I'm Bruce Lemon Jr. I'm an actor and artistic director at Watts Village Theater Company. We do theater in Watts. We're the only theater company in Watts, and there's not really too many running around South LA. And we do shows that talk about the social climate that we're dealing with, that we've dealt with, and that we're going to deal with. We do art that promotes change and is meant to spur conversation and get people thinking about the world they live in and what they can do to make it a better place. And I think that I do it out of necessity, not necessarily because I want to talk about the ills of the world every day, but because as an artist, I don't feel like we have the right to remain silent, and we have to do what we can to try to make something happen. So yeah, it's totally out of necessity. It's that it needs to be done, and it needs to be done in the communities where the people actually live, not across town where they might get bussed out for a show or two in their lifetime, but down the street where, you know, the 12-year-old can walk down the street and see a play of high quality and go, wow, I can do that, because that's not happening anywhere else.
I feel it's really hard to concentrate after just watching that. Thank you for sharing that piece with us. I think just right here as an example, immediately you can see how art can affect us in this moment, right? I grew up rapping. I'm from Sydney, Australia, but moved here about 8 years ago. My husband's American. But I grew up on hip-hop music, believe it or not. That's the music that I felt like I related to. And it was the art form that I used to tell my stories and to talk about what I was seeing in my community, what was going on. And so throughout my years, I always participated in community songwriting workshops, mostly with young women, teaching or facilitating the space where other young women can tell their stories. Then I moved into radio and television back home. My passion was always about the Australian hip-hop voice and giving that a platform. So that led me into media. So when I moved over here, I continued with my artistry, writing music, but also hosting youth radio workshops in Boyle Heights. I did a partnership with Radio Sombra over there. Then I had 2 kids. Put that on hold for a little bit. But I started a company called Artivist Entertainment. Now, what's an artivist? Does anyone know? An artivist is an artist activist. And it's not a phrase that I created, but it exists and I love it. So I call myself an artivist because I make music for positive social change. And Artivist Entertainment right now is, what we do is we support artists in all mediums who want to make change through their art. So why, it's probably similar to everybody's reasons why, is because we want to contribute to our community and because we see things in a way that we see the troubles and the issues with society and we see where things need to get better and to change, and so we just want to contribute and participate in that. Go ahead.
So my name is Faith. I am a poet. I actually have a little story, if I can share it.
Please.
So I went to Occidental College in the 90s. And a year and a half in, before the second half of my sophomore year started, I decided I knew what I wanted to do. So I left. I don't know if that qualifies me as alumnus because I dropped out. But I said I know what I want to do with my life, and I said I want to become a revolutionary. So I quit school and I went to the Philippines and joined the revolution. And before I came back, at one point there was a decision that I had to make about whether or not I stay in the Philippines and continue my work there, or come back to the States. And the kasama, what we call our comrades in the Philippines, they said, you play a critical role in our people's movement. You need to go back to the States, organize within the belly of the beast, recruit more, let other young Filipino Americans know what is going on back home. And so I came back, and there was a group of former activists from the Philippines that were here that were maybe about 20, 30 years older than I and a bunch of us. And we we looked to them to really kind of guide our work, and how do we do things, how do we talk about issues. And we would hold these events, and the thing that was frustrating was we would hold these events, but we were not reaching young Filipino Americans. It was either other activists from the Philippines, which was great, and then a bunch of really kind of weird lefties whose politics were dope as hell, but just are not organized, like couldn't organize their way out of a paper bag. So I was like, all right, so we need to do something that's really going to speak to the experience of Filipino American youth that probably don't even speak their own language anymore. And I grew up on hip hop as well. So I said, all right, well, I'm gonna write some poetry and I'm gonna perform this at our next health fair. Turns out it wasn't so bad. And so that's why I do what I do. And I would say that, yeah, I am a poet, but first and foremost, I identify myself as a servant of my people. And sometimes that manifests through art, and sometimes that manifests through organizing or chant leading or something. So that's why I do what I do.
So, Aleshea, and I work as, I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So I work as a playwright, a poet, and I'm an educator. I teach at CalArts. And so I'm a playwright because I started out as an actor in undergrad, and I became acutely aware of the sort of narrow ideas that people had about the roles that a Black female body could occupy on stage, and I found that incredibly frustrating. And so I also remember one of my classmates saying that ethnic was in, and I found that incredibly frustrating. So, and I'd always loved to write, but I didn't like dare to write. So, but I remember having this moment when I was in undergrad, and at that time had only thought like I want to do like avant-garde Shakespeare or something. Not what I'm trying to do these days. But where I was like, well, I'm going to write. I'm going to insert my voice into the landscape, and I'm going to make story that makes sense to me. So that's when I started writing, and then I decided to. I started a collective with a couple of other women and decided to apply and got into CalArts and have been making work like What to Send Up, which was here about a month and a half ago. And I think it springs from kind of the same impulses, feeling marginalized, feeling unheard, and really wanting to do something about that, to challenge the idea that I shouldn't be centered. So that's why I make work as a playwright. I think as a poet, it's a lot of the same. With spoken word poetry, though, I don't need as many collaborators, and that could be nice to just like write something and spit it. And then as an educator, I think I have a lot of power to challenge Eurocentricity, and so I try to do that whenever and however I can.
Hi, I'm Traci, and I have a nice attachment to your school here because I started doing theater when I was still in college at Cal State Fullerton, but we would rehearse here every Sunday and Monday at Johnson Hall. And I haven't seen it, I heard it looks all fancy now, but it was just, an old building, and we would, without fail, every Sunday, Monday rehearse here for years. And the reason why I even got into theater in the first place, I was actually a criminal justice major. I couldn't decide my whole life on what I wanted to do. I wanted to, quadruple major. And I was one of those people who, I declared my major on the last day that we had to do it. And I had remembered taking this one CJ class that was great. And as an activist, I felt like law would be interesting to just know. I had no aspirations to become a lawyer or to go into law enforcement. I just thought, just get the BA, study things that I want to know, right? I know it'll be good for my activism. And along the way, I had been writing, but just really casually, publishing in a community newspaper that, I ended up realizing that a lot of folks of my parents' generation were reading. And so as I was going along and writing, and I would go out to certain events, I would run into older friends of my parents. And they would tell me that they were keeping up with me and my work and what I was doing. And I was like, oh wow, there are actually people reading this. Oh, my own community, people who know my parents are reading my thoughts. And I remember thinking this feeling of it doesn't matter what the platform is, who do I want to talk to, and there are definitely people that I want to speak to. And they're the people that grounded me in everything that I do. So, different platforms that I eventually got invested in theater devising, in writing, and in organizing, I kind of feel like it just comes from this place of being rooted by my parents and them introducing me into another form of education, another way of communication. So they're both public school teachers, and they really wanted me to become a public school teacher. And they were the ones who took me to Manzanar, where they were both put away in camp during World War II. And so, you know, from the gate, I felt like it just felt like a natural thing to kind of process all of this information, historical trauma, struggle, and then see it in relation to what was happening in the present day. And, you know, I was really lucky to meet other folks, other aunties and uncles and big sisters in the community who were doing a lot of work because of our history with other communities. So I kind of see it like it's a way to do my solidarity work. It's the best way I know how to communicate. Sometimes if I'm in an argument with somebody, I have to like, if it's like a really close relation, I'll be like, give me 5 minutes, I gotta write something. And then I can convey within 3 minutes, maybe a whole story that I couldn't quite get out in our debate, you know. It's just my crutch in a way, right? Like I just feel more comfortable communicating through art. So yeah, I think that's my take on why I do what I do.
Yeah, I mean, I know hip hop is a common thread for a lot of people on the panel, but even before I really knew what that was, I came from a family that was really big on signifying. So like talking shit and like critiquing, taking apart language, and sort of spinning it and using it. And one of there are so many tools for oppression, you can't just choose one, but one of them is language. And I feel like for me, poetry is a way where I have the opportunity to drill down into language and really sort of study it. Like a lot of the times it looks like I'm writing something, but I'm studying something, right? I'm studying the way we, or dominant powers, order groups, culture, worlds. The other aspect about it for me though, is that by writing it, I create a document of my own thought at a moment. And it would be very egotistical for me to assume, right, that's the key, that other people are supposed to come to my thoughts. No, it's more like, I wrote this, I thought this, I have to live with the evidence of, at this moment, this was the way I thought about the world. And if I don't like that, then I now am accountable. I'm on record, right, as having said something, having done something, having thought something. And now I have an accountability that's personal, but also public. And I think this is really important as it's informed my work as a teacher. There's nothing worse for me than giving a lecture or having an interaction with a student and saying something and then realizing, oh, I got it wrong, or it's like, or that might do more harm than good, or something like that. So it's a sort of constant process of building a case sort of against who I was when I wrote it. Because my point in making art is one of the places where I think it's like people talk about it as though it's outside of life, right? But what art does to the art maker and the art listeners, it can transform them, and not just transform them when they're reading another book of poetry, not just transform the way they sit and watch a piece of theater or listen to music, right? But transform who they are when they're moving in between those spaces. And so for me as an artist, an educator, and performer, it's like a journal of trying to get better at being people. And that's why I do it. It's the way that it makes sense to me. And the things that I don't think I can do today, I hope that by continuing this practice, participating on panels with this, being inspired by other people, that maybe I can be more tomorrow than I am today. So that's why I do it.
I wasn't kidding when I said they were amazing.
I'm feeling a little emotional right now, actually. Thank you all for your generosity and sharing with a group of people you don't know. So some questions that we received that we'll address. We kind of addressed this already, but if anyone wants to respond again or in addition, what audiences do you have in mind when creating this work? A lot of you addressed this, but yeah.
I kind of see it as like three different silos of audiences. There's like the people who are experiencing it, the people who are just watching it, and the people who can do something about it. So like, you know, the people who are experiencing it, like I'm from the hood. Like first and foremost, I'm from Watts. It's the first thing I say wherever I go, you know, because people have this idea that you can't do certain things. But like you know, I got degrees, my mom's got degrees, my sister's got them, there's a homeless guy that's across the street. But, you know, like, we got things going. So like, I like to bring those things to like my immediate audience, which is my neighborhood, the people who look like me and talk like me, the kids who might look like me one day, you know, I like to give it to them. Also, the people who are just watching, the people who aren't necessarily involved who aren't necessarily being discriminated against or necessarily being oppressed, but are just watching it from the outside, so they know what the hell's going on. And then the people who do, which is like my fellow artists, because I like to collaborate with a lot of people and like develop works, and hope that we get to inspire each other in the process of creating new works. Like just now, like this is an active thing of like the people who do, like because y'all just act me crazy, you know, and not just the artists, but also like politicians, like policymakers. You know, we had one in for their 28 hours plays on Saturday. He's supposed to stay for an hour, but he stayed for like 2 hours and spoke at the end and walked out needing to do something, needing to get more people in the room, needing to figure out how can we get this work somewhere else. And like, oh, so you know now. He had an awakening, you know. So it's like activate the people that do. Like those are my audiences. Yeah.
Do you mind just briefly describing what every 28 hours play is? Because I don't think everyone knows.
Oh,
what that
okay.
is.
The Every 28 Hours plays is 72 one-minute plays that was developed with Oregon Shakespeare Festival and playwrights all over the country, one of which being Aleshea Harris. And these plays were, what we did is we did readings of the plays, stage readings, and we cut the plays in half. We did 36 of them at 1 o'clock and another 36 of them at 4:30, and had panel discussions, which were really just community discussions with everybody in the room. You were in the room, you were in the conversation. So like I wanted like, you know, like an actor and a assemblyman and a high school student to be able to share how they felt about what was going on and what we can do next. And the Every 28 Hours is a stat that has been widely circulated and contested by, well, you know who contested, that every 28 hours a black person is killed by law enforcement in the United States. And it doesn't seem like every 28 hours anymore. I'm pretty sure it's more frequent than that. Maybe every 28 hours we get a video, but I'm pretty sure it's more constant than that. But the plays themselves, all 1-minute pieces that are complete stories within themselves, and every last one of them just punches you right in the throat. And it was quite an experience to have we had 50 plus artists in the room, like working on all these plays. We had high school students tackling an entire section of the plays themselves to give us their view. And it was really, the experience kind of changed a lot of people, one of which, like, my mom was there, and she doesn't like speaking in front of people, but the moment she heard one of the high school students say out loud that she was scared, and that another hashtag, like another name every week was like a normal thing, and they're used to it. Like, it's a normalized part of their everyday culture, and they're scared. And it wasn't until she heard that she got activated and needed to speak. And then it just created a domino effect. Everybody got to see what everybody was dealing with for that moment. And I'm glad it happened. I wish that I hope that it can happen in more rooms. And this month of October, it's happening in rooms all over the country, like theaters and artists all over the country are doing concentrated programming of these plays throughout the entire month of October. So there's one happening in the Bay, I think this weekend actually. It's all over the place. So I'd advise you, go online, Google the Every 28 Hours plays. You go on Facebook, there's some of the pieces have already been filmed and are being spread around. So like, go find it, find out how you can be involved. And actually, the high school students that we had doing a section of the plays are going to tackle the entire collection themselves on November 16th. And these plays aren't even out for the public yet. Only the companies that are working on them right now have them until this month is over. But these high school students are tackling something that grown people cannot even, like, they don't want to hear about. But these high school students are tackling these issues completely by themselves in a totally student-run production, and we want to.
Is that going to be open to the public?
Yeah, it's open to the public.
Will you send me info, and what I'll do, I'll include it in the Oxy Arts Weekly, which all of you are spammed with every Friday. I'll include it in that, okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
My audience has been you guys for a long time. Well, I would say I have a song called Never Said Yes. It's all about consent, and it was inspired by rape on university campuses happening. I saw the film The Hunting Ground. I left really pissed, so I went and wrote this song. I'm also I work with Peace Over Violence. I'm on their I volunteer for Peace Over Violence. It's a rape crisis center. It also does a lot of prevention and education in high schools and in universities, and every year they have Denim Day campaign, which I'm a spokesperson for. And so I thought, okay, I can't just be a spokesperson and do a public service announcement every April and then not really be active. So what can I do to contribute? And I said, I want to write a song that talks about consent. The chorus is simple. I don't need to say no because I never said yes. It's not on the survivor to defend themselves, right? We need to stop victim blaming, and we need to end rape culture. So anyway, my idea when writing that song was I want every student in every high school, university around the world to know this and to use it as an anthem or even as a means of conversation with each other, a discussion, because that's what music is for. That's what art is for me, is to create these conversations. I feel like people, that we're seeing right now on television, you don't even want to say his name, right? People over 50, over 60 years old, they're gone. They're gone. You're not going to change their minds. They're gone. And there's no way you can educate them, right? It's the truth. It starts here. It starts actually, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, discussing what a healthy relationship is. So for me, that's where my energy goes to. That's who my audience is, to answer that question. Yeah.
So when I write, the people that I write for, it's pretty straightforward. I write for Filipinos, obviously, for youth of color, for mothers of color, single mothers of color. But I think the thing that's most interesting is when you're put in these spaces to perform for an audience that you didn't write it for. And I think that's a really valuable point I just want to make. I think another quick story, I don't know if people in this room remember this, but back in the 90s, there was a group of 72 Thai women who were enslaved in El Mani and were working sweatshop. They were working in a sweatshop, and they were not allowed to leave. And I had written this poem for them, and they said, this is great, you should perform it at our next protest. And so there's this store, I don't know if it's still there, Jessica McClintock, she makes like prom dresses and shit like that. So she had this big store on Rodeo Drive, and so they said, you should perform it there. I didn't know where it was. So I did this poem about trafficking and Thai women on Rodeo Drive, and the response was really kind of frightening from the passersby and the private security that they had. And so, if anybody in here is an artist, I would suggest that it would be a good stretch for you to actually create spaces where you are not comfortable and people don't look anything like you, and perform and present what it is you have to say.
Yeah.
Because that really reminds me of something. I was living in Minneapolis for a couple of years and doing stuff on like the spoken word scene. And there's a poet there named Bao Fee.
Yes.
Bao, yeah. And that was like the homie, right? And we would oftentimes do readings together. Now, what you have to understand about Bao Fee is like he is a soldier for the Asian diaspora and other like oppressed groups, but that is his first place. And he would do these poems that were oftentimes, we'll describe them as fiery, right? And I would do poems that were oftentimes described as fiery as well. But this is what became really interesting, this is how it ties in the audience. After readings, this Minneapolis, which, so it was largely white, but not only white, but largely white, people would come and be like, man, that was like incredible, boom, boom, boom. Bao, on the other hand, got hate mail. Bao got called out in newspapers. And this is something that I began to think about. That for certain performing bodies, subjectivities, let's say in my case, black male, if I get in front of a group of people and yell and rage and anger, there's almost something that I call like a horror movie or roller coaster ride like response to that, which is a kind of catharsis like, woo, all right. I let the black man yell at me for like 3 minutes. I paid to come do it. That was great. I'm not like my old man. I'm relieved. Woo! I proved it, right? But Bao, and anybody who knows anything about the particularities and the wide range of particularities around Asian diasporic oppression in the United States, looked to many of the members of the same audience as a traitor because he was supposed to be a model minority. This just goes so far as to say, like, that the inability to even get your racism right when dealing with somebody you don't know, because he's Vietnamese, so he's not even supposed to be model minority, but he was supposed to be model minority. So they would look at that, and it made them angry and not relieved. And so that made me think about a couple of things. If I am going to be in front of an audience, and I am trying to make work that actually shifts a paradigm and doesn't just sort of lay comfortably in it, I'm going to have to figure out a different way to approach that space. But the other thing that I wanted to say about that, because in some ways that's a very optimistic view. W.B. Du Bois, we oftentimes hear talk about, you hear the concept of double consciousness. Right? And that's, of course, the African and the American in the same body. And it's only with dogged strength that it keeps from falling itself apart. But that's not actually the point of double consciousness. The point of double consciousness is that certain subjectivities are forced to live knowing they are always being watched. And so that every gesture that we make, you think primarily of, oh, I'm going to pick up, oh, damn, I dropped a piece of paper, let me pick it up. For some subjectivities, the acknowledgement is, I dropped a piece of paper. What is that person going to think about me for having dropped this piece of paper? How am I going to pick it up? What am I going to do? Did I just say, oh, man, black people are clumsy? Oh, shit, they dropped paper? What? Like, that's the double consciousness.
And if you're a woman.
And if you're a woman, exactly. That's why, exactly. That's why I was like, some subjectivities deal with that and then deal with multiple tiers of it. Right? So recognizing, I can talk about how I want to write for a certain audience as much as I'd like. But there's YouTube, there's camera. You're always, you don't always get to choose your audience. And that moment, which is what, part of what you're talking about, that's a significant change, I think, to art making in the 21st century versus the first half of the 20th century. And thinking about what that means, right, is one of the challenges. I like what you said earlier about what people should prepare for, not just what's happening, not just what's happened, but what is going to happen. And so I think that these kinds of opportunities and moments are some of the challenges, and especially if you've got multiple layers of domination over you, perspectives of control and how you should be. It just magnifies and multiplies. So yeah.
I want to build on that. I think You know, I think I'm an optimist when it comes to audience. You know, I think I write very specifically to a person or a specific community, but I'm also thinking about how in that detail, in that specificity, I know and trust that there is beyond universal reverberation, right? And I think about, I love that point about just the way in which we're taken, even with the same sort of feeling, intention, emotion, but by the case that it comes in, by this vessel, it's taken in all these different ways. And when you talked about model minority, Doug, just now, I was thinking about how that is a lot of my community. In the Japanese American community, I think one of the reasons why I choose to speak not just to the folks that are, you know, that I'm organizing with, but also the people way outside of that, I think about the uncles and aunties that didn't raise me to be, you know, invested in revolutionary politics, but the ones who became Republican, the ones who decided to drop Buddhism after being put in camp, the ones who decided to stop speaking Japanese, to become as American as possible. They've raised generations now, right, that vote a certain way, and they are actually active themselves. And so, you know, say in like my queerness, I felt like I was always wanted to have these conversations with my own community, because I know the way that my community is. It's like, and I'm sure other communities feel this way, where there's a lot of, you know, you'll know somebody in the community and you won't get to talk about this thing that's like in the air, but you know it's being talked about, you know, because it travels to you somehow. So I was like, gosh, do I just have to like come out publicly? You know, how do I do that? So that paper I mentioned, like 10 years later when I wrote for it again, my first article writing it out, or an essay, was just called LGBTJAQ. And it was just like an open letter about like, yes, I am, here's the deal, let's talk about it, right? So I kind of think I want to always think about, when we're talking about the experience changes people, it's also the art making that does, right?
Yeah.
When we're making art, this is why I think I love live performance, why I love theater, why I love doing readings with our poetry, because I want to see the audience, I want to see the reaction, I want the opportunity to have a communication right after we're done. You can't get that when you're putting out TV and film. I mean, it's more distant. It takes more time in certain ways. And yeah, I don't know, I could go on and on, but these are some thoughts.
Navigating this space is really tricky for me, and it's something that I grapple a lot with, especially with pieces like What to Send Up When It Goes Down. Because the piece is, as Dina described, a ritual that is meant to be carried out by Black people. And you know, there's some audience participation. And I also mentioned centering Black people. So for me, the piece is an offering that anyone is welcome to attend. But I find that in talking about the piece, people who've not seen it or have seen it would sometimes say things like, this would be really great in Middle America, you know what I mean? Like, and it's jarring because I understand that they assume that a piece that's challenging anti-Blackness is for white people. Like they feel like the message is, they want to recenter white people in this really interesting and troubling way. And so I realize in those moments like what we're up against, and that there hasn't been this great shift. Like people don't understand, no, this is written for Black people. You know, everyone can come and it has value, as Traci said. And there's a beyond universal element. But in this moment, I need to talk about the trauma of being a Black person in America, and I need other Black people to be affirmed in this. And whoever can come and get something can get something. But I'm not trying to answer questions about like, what do you think the role of white people is in this? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not. I got enough work to do. I can't. Like I can't do that. So I think about that, and you know, the theater world is really tricky in terms of like who has the power to take a piece somewhere, to sort of knight the piece worthy of attention. And oftentimes those people are outside of my experience and cannot understand decentering white. Like it's so entrenched. It is so entrenched that they can't even conceive I mean, y'all can just chill and, you know what I mean, for a little bit.
There's so many artists that grapple with that, actually. You know, it's interesting. I have two thoughts about that. One is when you make art and you put it into the world, it's out, right? And it's all about the person's own experiences and what they want to get out of it. But another example is artists like Michael Franti with Spearhead and, you know, Mos Def and Talib Kweli, because Australia is a fairly white country. And there's a lot of, you know, multicultural people. I'm half Mexican, half Turkish, a lot of immigrants. But they come out and they want to see we're all out, you know, black people are, or Africans, or because we have a lot of people from Africa migrating to Australia. And some people get upset, you know, that it's a very white audience. And it's like, well, for some reason they do really well over there. So how do you, and I've heard the same thing, you know, similar discussions, like, I'm trying to talk to my community. How do I really reach my community? And I don't know, I feel like, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for your thoughts. This has been really a rich experience. Professor Doug,
Just Doug is cool.
Doug, you were talking earlier about the accountability process. When you write something, it's like a marker to write a timestamp. How honest are you, and I want to ask the whole panel, how honest are you in those moments where the deepest, darkest, scariest thing you write down is actually something that you share with the world, right? For that reason that it's no longer yours once it's in the world. So to hold yourself accountable, right, as a performance artist, like at what point are you like, listen, this does not see the light of day, or, you know, I actually just want to share all of who I am in this very vulnerable way with the audiences that we speak to.
And that also speaks directly to our next question. So this is perfect of a question. Thank you. This question about how do you experience these challenges of engaging in identity-based performance, or this work that is so personal to you? Yeah.
I mean, I opened the can on that one, so I'll give two examples. So I was writing this poem called Live Evil, which is the name of a Miles Davis album. And one of the kinds of ways that in rhetorical traditions that I think are quite familiar to hip-hop culture, signifying culture, spoken word culture, is the kind of taking of the great figure and exposing something about that great figure and kind of juxtaposing yourself as though to say, and look, I'm better than that person. So Miles Davis, if you don't know, admitted to abusing, physically abusing, and emotionally abusing the women in his life, including his one-time wife, the actress Cicely Tyson. And not only would he admit these things, he'd sort of brag about them. And by sort of, I mean he would brag about them. Pearl Clay, a writer, once wrote an essay called Mad at Miles, in which she wrote the quote, Miles has admitted to abuse of women such that we should burn his tapes, scratch up his CDs, and break his albums, something like that, until he acknowledges and apologizes. So I began writing this poem called Live Evil with that as the epigraph. That was like the entry to the poem. And so I'm doing, I'm writing this, I'm getting into it, and I start doing technical flim-flam shit. Like I'm like, okay, like how does jazz improvisation work? They take a head phrase and they improvise on it. So I created this construction. The pin's point comes down on the butterfly. The knuckle comes down on Miss Sicily. The mallet comes down on the CD case. And I'm like, okay, so that's the head, so let me start improvising. Let me start skipping around. This is what happened in the writing of the poem. I realized that I was making equivalences between a butterfly, a plastic case that you put a CD in, and a human woman. Now, I realized this in the drafting process. So I very easily could just be like, oh, don't go there, and just like maintain my cred and go out into the world and look totally right-minded. But no, that kind of equivalence is the rhetorical way that we get to dehumanize and treat people like they're not people. So my attempt to write a poem criticizing that revealed my own rhetorical sense that I could do it. So the poem instantly turns around from being about Miles Davis to us, to phrases, what have we made, right? It would have been very easy and very comfortable to just be like, ooh, shit, I realized this, right? Not even a way I consciously going about thinking, but now I realize that I would make that equivalent. So that's one example of it, right? You commit to the act of trying to make the truest lie you can, because art is a lie, right? like it's a lie. It's a lie. I mean, like, if we actually wrote our full self, it would come out like, that's what it would sound like. No, it's a cultivated thing. But you are making the truest lie you can. That's my opinion. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. That's my opinion. And so it's like, in art is artifice. You're making a thing that's different from just being the thing you are, right? So for me, that's a level of commitment that you have to do. And I can look back at old poems where I've said things that I was like not comfortable with, and I was like obscuring it in really coded language, like, you know, talking about looking at pornography and saying things like, the slick screen of the, I mean, like stuff like that, right? Like how do you come correct, essentially? And that's, every time I make art, it's the opportunity to come correct. But then I can be in a room and I feel like I have, because I have modeled the way one can begin to come correct, I feel like I can look at you now and be like, what do you say? What do you think? How are you reenacting these things that you claim to be against, right? I'm not coming at it from the position of the holy man coming down the hill and pointing at all the sinners. I'm coming from the perspective of, God, I had to pull myself up out of some muck that I'm not all the way out of, and I don't know everything yet. But I tell my students this every time, and I was really appreciative of what you said earlier about like, and if you're a woman, I can look in this room in 2016, and I will tell you, there are ways in which my selfhood is oppressed, but there are also ways in which I am privileged. I'm straight, I'm middle class, I'm educated, I'm a male, right? Even if I'm thinking intra-racially, I'm a light-skinned black person. So I have certain measures of privilege in this moment. I teach artists. I don't think I can tell them what kind of art to make, because I might need to be addressed in some of that art. But I can tell them that they need to be willing to stand next to the art they make. And that if you want to be provocative, what provocative means is people get upset and unsettled, and you do not, under any circumstances, get to play a coward. Say something that violates somebody's sense of self, and then be like, oh, free expression, well, I don't get it. That's so that's what I'm saying. If you do that every time, it's steps, but that's all I feel like I can demand of an artist. Whether I agree with them or not, you stand next to this turd you made and threw at us, and be accountable for it. That's all I'm saying. I'm sorry, I talked to you.
I remember hearing about a playwright, Philip Kongotanda, who struggled a lot after some successful plays about what he was going to write next, and kind of asked himself and then asked other people, you know, what is it that you need to write? What is it that you need to say? And if you don't, you will die. Like, what is it you need to say? And if you don't, you will die if you don't say it. And so I do think about permission a lot and accountability. And I want to echo that point of standing by it, because it's an interesting question of you know, I thought it was an interesting way of wording it. Like, oh, this part, you know, do you ever feel like you're capitalizing on pain? Oh, we haven't gone to that. I just feel like it's so within
This is now free for all. Now, please.
When we're talking about audience and trauma and like, and
We all often say yes.
accountability, you know, I tripped on that a little just because I was like, well, I mean, this is the way I'm navigating pain. Like, the way I'm surviving. It's the way I'm thriving or trying to. And I'm not even creating art just to do it for an audience. I'm really invested in the processes by which we can go through art making and organize ourselves and each other. So an example is like working with elder Japanese American activists and younger Muslim American storytellers, and going through a process by which we go through storytelling and exercise and writing, and really uncovering history, contemporary trauma, everything that's going on, and organize ourselves into each other. So that we leave that process not just with a great show, with this great reception by this audience, but more principally, the people that participated in that are changed forever. You know what I mean? So.
Two things. One, Doug, you have to go pick up your kids.
Oh.
We still have 15 minutes, but he has to pick up his kids from school. Thank you, guys. That's a reality too, right? You gotta juggle. You gotta juggle the personal and the career. Thank you, Doug. But I would love to keep going on that, of this question of that idea of identity and trauma, and if we have questions from the audience, yes.
Well, what you said was really interesting because it made me think of like tying a bunch of the questions that we've been talking about together, which is who is the audience, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily always created a piece of art for someone else other than yourself. And then what does that mean? And then tied up in that, because we live in a capitalist society, when you do put something out there, not ever knowing what's going to take root and what's not, like what you said, Aleshea, like who's going to give it that stamp or not, and what that does to your art, not only in terms of like the economic impact of it, perhaps the cultural impact, but also how people perceive it, how people take it in because it has received a stamp or not, or gotten a lot of recognition, or like hit people in some emotional place or not. I think it's like all of those layers then change how people are receiving the work you put out there that originally may or may not been for anybody else but you, or a specific audience, regardless.
Yeah, I found it really empowering. It like forced me to be brave to work on what to send out, because I don't typically work as a director. But to your point, I spoke with the cast, some of them are here. We talk a lot about how the ritual could still happen without an audience, that it is for them, that like part of my ritual was writing the piece, revising the piece, and directing the piece. So it was all about healing from this trauma, like the entire process. And then of course an audience gets to witness them going through the ritual. But yeah, it gets super complicated when one considers like commerce, you know what I mean? Like what is this worth, and how much can we sell a ticket for, and have you won any awards, and has it been reviewed, you know what I mean? There's a way that I think that the work is devalued, and I think that that is also tied to the content, because some people are tired, don't want to hear Black people talk about their pain, and to the fact that these are Black bodies in space, and I think that we are inherently of less value as far as some people are concerned as theater makers. So.
What other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, it just made me think about when you're saying navigating pain, and the way that when you put out a piece of work, how you're going to strategize for it to, like what audiences and how do you want it to be shown, and how do you want to, it's like how you want to present your piece. So you get the most, I guess, becoming from filmmaking, you get it's going to last longer, or it's going to have legs, or whatever. But I think that, but you do have a core audience, and I think it maybe gets to a larger audience. But sometimes these people you never thought would come are actually coming, and you're just like, you have no control of that. You know, you have a perception, even of your own work, but when it's out in the world, different people that you never thought of may be this activist you never thought of would just really be behind your work. So. I know it's more of a statement than
I started writing as therapy for myself, like as a teenager, dealing with, my parents' divorce or, whatever, being teased, being told to go back to my own country. People in Australia would say, "Where were you born? Go back," all this stuff. And because there's no Mexicans in Australia, they would call me all the names that they call Aboriginal people. That's derogatory. And then within hip hop, then it becomes, I'd be on stage and people would say, show us your tits and take it off and all this other stuff. And God forbid you are very feminine, MC, because now you're whatever, compared to Little Kim or Foxy Brown, 90s. So then you're in this other set of rules on stage. But going back to what we were talking about, capitalizing off music, for one, yes, it's all in the practice of writing or the art making. That's where I think it lies for all of us, why we love doing it and why we do it first. I've facilitated workshops with refugees, and there was ones from Syria last year, actually just a couple of years ago, and just them telling their story, and this every Saturday, it was for 6 weeks every Saturday, and just that within itself was enough. We didn't need to show it to an audience or to, print out a booklet of all the stories that they wrote. I remember when it was very sad, it was coming to an end, because I said, what do we do now every Saturday? It was the act of community of us coming together. Now, in terms of putting your art into a vehicle and getting it out there, the song I was talking to you guys about earlier, Never Said Yes, I specifically asked for a film director, Kimberly Bautista, because she did a documentary called Justice for My Sister, which is all about a woman being murdered by her boyfriend in Guatemala, and the sister was going out and finding justice for her, and it was talking about the femicide that's going on down there, the millions of murders happening every year, and because it's women, nobody cares. So I knew she got it, and I knew that whatever the visual representation of this song was, we were on the same page. And what I didn't want to do was recreate the trauma. When you look at Lady Gaga's video, even though it's a great song, she's recreating a visual, of rape, and a sexual abuse. And I was very purposefully did not want to do that. I have a song called Crumble, which is all about school to prison pipeline. It's about this mass incarceration, police brutality. And Doug's not here, but I feel really confronted with that song now, because now I'm starting to perform that. And I performed at a festival in Pasadena a couple of weeks ago, and there was policemen just watching me with their arms, closed the whole time, and I was like going, oh shit. But what do you say, What do you say? Because these things need to be said. But again, I was very weary about, okay, how are we going to show this? And you want to speak into, you want to tell a story, but you want to speak into, this video has a political cartoonist named Lalo Alcaraz, who has a huge history of political cartoons and animation. So we used his artwork to deliver this message. But in the end, we offer a society we feel like we want to live in. We offer some kind of solution, not just this is the pain and suffering and again and again and again, but this is what we want to see. Here is something that could be an alternative. So you're constantly checking yourself. You're constantly checking, okay, how is this really going to contribute? That's not self-serving. That doesn't feed into your own kind of ego all the time. But it is, I have to say that Doug was very courageous and probably more involved than I am, because it is extremely hard to hold yourself accountable publicly, right? And a lot of the times I write stuff and I can't put that out there. Only a couple of times I've done stuff that has been really personal that I've actually let see the light of day. It's much easier to talk about, stuff going on out there than it is internally, right?
Yeah.
I'll go after you.
All right. I'm not sure if I'm answering a question or following this, but there's a checking yourself that you got to do, taking the position of looking at the world and forming an opinion and telling everybody what that opinion is. I think there's a fair amount of checking that you have to do within yourself, again, to check your own, what's the word we use, privileges. Your own privileges, like I had to check mine every single day when I realized like who I'm talking to, what I'm talking about. But like, you gotta be ready to get checked on it by other people, because they're not, like, I gotta be just as accountable for what play I produce in my theater as you gotta be for what you decide to share on Facebook, especially if it's public, because people are gonna have something to say about it. And if you're not gonna stand by it, don't do it. And if you're not gonna look at yourself, don't talk about nobody else. Just sit in the corner. Like, if you're gonna participate fully. You know, you don't get to just like say I believe in this and then run away. Like, you gotta stand out there and take them shots.
So there's a lot of things that were going through my mind as I was listening to what everyone was saying, and you know, something that I don't know if I'm that comfortable with admitting, but I'll readily admit it, is that, you know, I came into poetry with no desire for it to be some kind of catharsis for me. You know, back when I started writing, it was very clear it was a very utilitarian reason. I am here to organize people for the revolution, and they don't understand imperialism, so let me just try to write a poem about it so they can understand. But it's been 20 years, and I think as I've gotten older, I realized the value of kind of putting your stuff out there for the world to see. The thing that's funny is that I look back at poetry that I wrote when I was 19 years old, and I'm like, ooh, it's a little crunchy, you know, because I was like, I'm a revolutionary, I know everything, like, you know, down with all of this, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, that was the space I was in, and I'm very happy about that space that I was in, and if that speaks to somebody who is 19 in that space, then that's really all that matters. But the thing that is hard for me to admit, and as I listen to everybody, what everybody said, is that for me, as I've gotten older, I see the value of poetry being therapeutic, but I still haven't taken my poetry there. Really, this is how I come up with what I'm about to write. If I'm mad at something, if I'm mad at somebody, and I did not get everything out that I wanted to say, then I'm gonna write about it. And I feel like whenever I write, it is kind of this is how I assert control over my reality. You know, there are plenty of times where I felt, you know, right now I'm a union rep for, it's all white men. And the kind of treatment I get when I walk on set is like, oh, you know, oh, you must be some producer's girlfriend, or you know, you're here, you must be, oh, no, the extras are supposed to check in at base camp, things like that. And I don't have much control over that situation. And so what I have seen is that my poetry has turned into like, all right, so you were a fucking asshole. So I'm gonna write this big fuck you right now and perform it. And that's really, so while I can't say I've gotten into any of these dark spaces where I'm like, here it is, and you know, it is kind of how I've figured out this is how I'm gonna control, this is how I'm gonna control my reality. This is how I'm gonna stay sane. And again, as a 39-year-old woman, if whatever I'm saying speaks to somebody out there who feels the exact same way, then it's all good. And I have nothing to be apologetic about.
And on that note, I'm feeling very full. I bet everyone is. I would love, in our last remaining moments, if Aleshea, would you like to close us out?
I can.
I'd love. Okay.
For those of you in possession of a body, black, be it the suit over your bones, or the baby in or out of your belly, or in arms, or tugging at pant leg, or complaining from the back seat, beware, be wary. Baby is a weapon. You are a weapon drawn. And some don't like the way black body drinks the sun, so they dilute it, put a hole in it, or two, or three, or enough bullets to call it riddle. What's black and polka dotted and down but up in arms? What's black and polka dotted and down but up in arms? I'll wait. I won't. And don't tell me about a riot when I've been looted since they aimed at me in the sip. Belly ablaze when I see them, their guns on their hips, or slowing down in cruisers to watch me be weapony, I guess. They tell me we have the gift of flight, that we can ride the air home if we want to. No one mentioned that it would so often be a red-eye, vigil, the passengers all screaming at the cost of the body bag, the bullet hole mouths weeping, but lacking the teeth to speak the names of the dead. There is not enough bellow or strain for what I want to do. There is not enough cocktail for drinking or flinging back. I will put this unnameable grief, anger thing in a box marked danger. I will set a lock of poetry on it, and I will hope for the best. For those of you with skin found not just detestable, but killable, for those of you with blood especially spillable, for those of you explaining to the privileged, some of whom play in the ashes of your pain, but would swear they have never seen a fire, I say, do not look to the sky for an end to the storm. I say, put your children to bed with a barbed nursery rhyme. I say anyone with gray hair and black skin and any love left in their hearts has earned a rocking place, a rest. I say the ones gone might be the lucky ones. I say, what did I just say? I say I am tired of beating dead horses. I like horses. I say if we are weapons, we must all be on safety. There is not enough boom. There is not enough metal casing. There is not enough fist or hug or cry or slogan lullaby. What to do? What to do? What? But reach into back pocket for a slingshot or sword and find only words. Only words. The congress between sound and breath. Words. One in particular, G-O-N-E, gone. The letters holding hands like Red Rover. The letters don't want to let go because they know what it is, gone. The G flexing its muscles like a straight G, like that's what you got to be. Got to be a thing impenetrable in the workspace, public place, grit the teeth, grin and bear, grin if they stare, growl if they try to touch your hair, giggle often but not too often, give them their own grief. What to do? What? Should we go back? Go be unborn? Go be so small as to be unbeen? Oh, can we say oh like God in the corner trying to catch her breath? Oh, they left him. Oh, in the sun like, oh, like a nothing. Oh, and I'm God, so I ain't never made a nothing. Go and tell them I said that, and never mind if they don't listen, and save your toil for your people, and I did not put you here to convince them that you get to be here. Nah, and nope, and we do not beg the rope, we cut it down. We gone, G-O-N-E, but not for easy. For the easy chair they thought you was, for the way you bit them when they sat. For black is not a color, but a hue, but a thing you wake up in the morning and do, but a shade for reminding the sun when it forgets, and the frat boy sons when they forget, and the old news when it forgets that you can hang a thing from an unsuspecting tree. You can polka dot its torso. You can name its babies missiles, but you cannot undo it, not now, not never. You cannot really make it gone. So we gon' get along. Maybe not like happy,
Maybe not like peace, more like there's gravel in my knees, but I'ma dance it out. Carry the casket, plant the roses, read the plaque, me in my black body, me in this fine suit, and the words, 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 and the words that come with it.
You are incredible. Thank you everyone so much for coming. There are cookies and juice. Also in the chair over there, there is a flyer with everyone's name and everyone's bio. They are all Googleable. They're all Googleable. You can find them. Thank you again.